Stop. Read this opening line very carefully and then ask yourself if you have heard it correctly. Prince William, in his capacity as the heir to the throne of the United Kingdom, has tonight initiated formal legal proceedings to strip Prince Harry of his Duke of Sussex title. And in a move that has detonated like a constitutional bomb across the entire House of Windsor, every honor, every property, every financial instrument associated with that title is being transferred directly to a 15-year-old boy named James, Earl of Wessex, the youngest son of Prince Edward. Pause for a moment, take a breath, because the British monarchy has survived world wars. It has survived abdication crises. It has survived centuries of political upheaval, scandal, and revolution. It has outlasted empires that once stretched across every continent on the globe, and it has endured revolutions that toppled every other royal house in Europe. But tonight, something has happened inside those palace walls that even the most seasoned royal watchers, the men and women who have spent their entire careers studying every corner of the institution, never saw coming. Something so legally unprecedented, so constitutionally explosive, that scholars are already comparing it to the abdication crisis of 1936. And this time, there is no abdication letter. This time, there is no princely renunciation written in the small hours of the night. This time, the monarchy is fighting back with surgical, calculated, devastating precision. Stay with me, because by the end of the next several minutes, you will understand exactly why this moment will be remembered, dissected, and debated by historians for the next 100 years. Prince William has done what nobody, not the most cynical commentator, not the most aggressive royal correspondent, not even the most pessimistic Sussex critic, ever truly believed any reigning royal would dare to do. He has moved formally, legally, and irrevocably to strip his own brother, Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, of his title. Not through gossip whispered in palace corridors, not through back-channel pressure exerted by anonymous courtiers, through documented legal proceedings and constitutional mechanisms that have not been activated since the First World War, mechanisms older than most of the houses on your street, mechanisms designed for traitors, mechanisms that history nearly forgot. But here is where it gets extraordinary, where the story sharpens into something almost unbelievable. The title is not being erased, it is being transferred. Read that again. The Duke of Sussex title, that storied, controversial, instantly recognizable royal name, is being passed to a 15-year-old boy, a teenager named James, Earl of Wessex. A young man who has spent his entire life deliberately, carefully, almost obsessively, kept in the shadows by parents who wanted him to grow up away from the glare, suddenly thrust, without warning, without a press conference, without preparation, into the very center of the most dramatic royal restructuring in living memory. And here's the question nobody in the mainstream media is asking tonight. The question that, once you start to look for it, you cannot unsee. Is this a reaction, or was this always the plan? Because when you examine the timeline, when you actually map out the documents, the meetings, the legal preparations, what emerges is not impulse. What emerges is strategy. A long-game constitutional maneuver, 18 months in the making, sitting in a palace drawer, waiting for exactly the right trigger, waiting for Harry to step over exactly the right line. And Harry, in his catastrophic, self-destructive, almost cinematic way, gave William that trigger in Sydney, Australia in March of 2026. Stay with me. Because what you are about to hear next is the most damning, most comprehensive, most institutionally devastating account of a royal misstep ever assembled in modern history, and you are only seeing the surface of it. Let us turn to what insiders are now openly calling the Australia scandal, the 8 categories of catastrophe. Because to understand why William moved when he did, you need to understand precisely what Harry actually did in Australia. Not the headlines, not the spin, not the soft focus pictures provided by Sussex public relations. The documented, categorized, evidence-backed record of 8 separate categories of transgression that palace officials privately describe as the most comprehensive breach of royal protocol since the abdication crisis of 1936. 8 categories, 8 knives, each one driven by Harry's own hand into the back of the institution he was born into. Category 1. Unauthorized diplomatic engagement. In March of 2026, Harry traveled to Sydney. The trip was described publicly by his representatives as personal and private. It was, in fact, neither. Within hours of his arrival on Australian soil, Harry was seated inside Kirribilli House, the official residence of the Australian Prime Minister, for a 90-minute private meeting with Anthony Albanese. No notification to the British Foreign Office, no clearance from Buckingham Palace, no briefing to the British High Commission in Canberra, nothing. According to transcripts that leaked to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation in the days following, Harry proposed serving as a special envoy for Commonwealth relations. He was, in plain language, offering himself as a freelance royal, a parallel voice in Commonwealth diplomacy. In direct, explicit, undeniable contradiction of the Sandringham Agreement he himself had signed in 2020. This was not a casual conversation. This was Harry positioning himself as an alternative instrument of British soft power, without authorization, without oversight, without accountability. And the palace watching from London understood exactly what they were seeing. Category 2. Security breaches. Harry's protection in Australia was privately funded, not provided by the Metropolitan Police, as would be the standard for someone of his standing. His private detail failed to coordinate with the Australian Federal Police, creating what security experts now describe as a 7-hour window during which the sixth in line to the British throne was effectively unprotected in a foreign jurisdiction. 7 hours, unmonitored, uncoordinated, in a country currently conducting its own political conversation about the monarchy's future. Read that again because the implications are enormous. Category 3. Financial impropriety. Records show that Harry received a $250,000 speaking fee from the Commonwealth Business Council. That fee was not transparently declared. It was routed through a Delaware-registered limited liability company, raising tax compliance questions across 3 separate jurisdictions: the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia. Was this deliberate financial concealment? Was it bureaucratic carelessness with extraordinary consequences? Either answer is damaging. Either answer raises serious questions about a man who still holds a royal title and who continues to trade commercially on that royal association. Category 4. Protocol violations. At a veterans event during his Australian visit, Harry wore military decorations, including the Afghanistan Service Medal. Medals he is, post-2020, not entitled to publicly display. His honorary military appointments were stripped formally in 2020. The Ministry of Defense does not describe this incident as an oversight. They call it, in the language of their own internal memorandum, unauthorized use of insignia. And ask yourself this: is this the behavior of a man who has genuinely moved on? Or is this a deliberate, public, provocative assertion of a royal identity his family formally asked him to surrender? Category 5. Media manipulation. Harry's team prearranged coverage of the Australia trip with American outlets, positioning the visit as a quasi-official royal tour while deliberately excluding British press. The result was competing narratives reaching global audiences simultaneously. One narrative suggesting Harry was operating in an official capacity, another insisting it was a private trip. The palace, watching from London, understood exactly what this media architecture was designed to achieve. And, importantly, they documented every element of it. They saved the screenshots, they archived the press releases, they built the file. Category 6. Institutional criticism. At a private dinner attended by 47 guests at the Australian National University, Harry was recorded. He did not know he was being recorded. What he said in that room, behind closed doors, away from cameras, in a setting where he believed he could speak freely, was described by palace officials as active undermining of his father's reign. He called the monarchy an institution in managed decline. He spoke about radical transparency and modernization in language, clearly suggesting that Charles's current stewardship was failing. His father is fighting cancer, his brother is preparing to inherit the crown, and Harry, at a private dinner in Canberra, was dismantling the institution that defines them both. Think about what it means for a son to describe his own father's reign publicly as managed decline. Whatever your position on Harry's broader grievances against the institution, whatever sympathy you feel for the man who lost his mother at a young age, that specific moment, those specific words, in that specific room, crossed a line that the palace could not and would not overlook. Category 7. Exploitation. Promotional materials for Harry's upcoming memoir sequel, reportedly titled Spare No More, prominently feature photographs from the Australia trip alongside text suggesting ongoing royal duties. This creates deliberate consumer confusion about whether Harry is operating in an official capacity. It monetizes the ambiguity of his royal status commercially, while simultaneously damaging the palace institutionally. It is, in the harshest possible reading, a man wearing a uniform he was told to take off and selling tickets to the spectacle. Category 8. And this is the one that pushed everything past the point of no return. The meeting with Republican advocates. Harry met privately with representatives of the Australian Republic movement. He reportedly told them, in the kind of conversation that diplomats describe as red line conversations, that he understood their perspective. That the future of the Commonwealth depends on voluntary association rather than inherited obligation. The heir to the British throne, watching from London, received this intelligence within hours. And whatever small, fragile window remained open for reconciliation closed permanently in that moment. Because there is a difference. A fundamental, irreducible, constitutional difference between a royal stepping back from duties and a royal actively lending his credibility, his presence, and his implicit endorsement to a movement whose singular purpose is the abolition of everything his family represents. Harry crossed that line in Australia, and William, with 18 months of preparation already silently behind him, was ready. Take each of these categories individually. Each one represents a serious breach that warrants a formal institutional response. But taken collectively, as a documented, sequenced, evidence-supported pattern of behavior across a single visit, royal historians are reaching for the vocabulary of 1936 to find language adequate to describe it. The palace did not need to stretch to build this case. The case built itself. Harry provided every element in every category, across 8 days in March 2026, and the institution was watching every single minute of it. Now, stay close, because here is where the story separates entirely from royal gossip and enters the territory of genuine constitutional history. Because the question is not whether Harry behaved badly. The question is whether William, as heir, not yet as king, possesses the legal mechanism to formally strip a royal duke of his title. And the answer, according to Three Kings Council retained by the Palace Legal Office, is yes. Narrowly, carefully, but yes. Let us walk through the legal architecture, because every viewer needs to understand exactly what is happening tonight. The legal framework rests on 3 interconnected statutes, each one a thread, each one ancient, each one waiting in the law books for precisely this moment. The first thread, the Titles Deprivation Act of 1917. Last invoked during the First World War against British peers who chose to fight for Germany. This statute allows the Crown, through the Privy Council, to strip honors from individuals who adhere to the Crown's enemies or act fundamentally against the interests of the monarchy. Palace legal advisors are now arguing that Harry's engagement with Republican movements, organizations whose explicit purpose is the abolition of the monarchy, constitutes adhering to entities fundamentally opposed to monarchical continuity. Constitutional scholars are divided on whether this argument holds, but in matters of honor and dignity, The Crown has historically been afforded extraordinary judicial deference, and the palace is betting on that history. The second thread. The Royal Marriages Act of 1772, partially superseded but not entirely displaced by the Succession to the Crown Act of 2013. Its remaining provisions grant the sovereign and direct heirs significant authority over the official roles and public capacities of family members. William's legal team has argued that Harry's unauthorized diplomatic engagement in Australia falls squarely within the conduct these provisions were designed to regulate. The third thread, the Crown Estate Act of 1961. This act establishes that properties, titles, and dignities held by royal family members are ultimately subject to Crown control, not personal ownership. Read that again, because everything else hinges on it. Harry does not own the Duke of Sussex title. He holds it at the Crown's pleasure. He always has. The palace is reminding him of that fact tonight in the most consequential way possible. Two precedents complete the legal picture. In 2022, Prince Andrew was stripped of his military titles and his Royal Highness status through a mechanism combining family pressure, personal agreement, and implied Crown authority. No formal parliamentary process required. The institution remembered exactly how that procedure worked. They did not need to reinvent the wheel. They had already tested the machinery on Andrew. They simply needed to scale it. And the Duke of Windsor, Edward VIII, had his financial arrangements dictated by his brother, George VI, for decades after the abdication, despite retaining the ducal title itself. The principle that a younger royal can be financially controlled by a more senior royal even after a formal departure was already established in modern history. William simply applied that principle to a new and more aggressive context. But here is what makes this current action genuinely novel, what places it in a category entirely its own in modern constitutional history: the transfer mechanism. William is not simply revoking Harry's title. He is invoking a medieval doctrine called the translation of honors, whereby a title is not extinguished but redirected to preserve its continuity and its associated properties. The Duke of Sussex title, with all its financial instruments, property allocations, and heraldic dignities, moves directly from Harry to James. The title survives, its holder changes. And in doing so, William sidesteps several of the most problematic legal vulnerabilities that pure revocation would create. Does this require parliamentary approval? Palace counsel argue it does not, relying entirely on the Privy Council mechanism. Harry's legal team will, of course, argue otherwise. That argument will unfold in court, but the palace has already filed, and the Privy Council meeting in early May represents the moment of formal, final, irreversible ratification. Once the Privy Council ratifies the order in council, Harry's legal options narrow dramatically. Judicial review in the High Court remains theoretically available. But constitutional scholars give any challenge less than a 15% chance of success, given the broad discretion historically afforded to the Crown in matters of honor and dignity. The institution has built this case carefully. Every legal threshold has been cleared. Every precedent has been studied. What you are watching tonight is not improvisation, it is execution. But here is where the investigation moves beyond documented facts and into the architecture of power itself, because this was not a reaction to Australia. Every document, every date, every meeting in this timeline confirms one inescapable conclusion. William has been preparing this exact move since at least November of 2025, months before Harry ever set foot in Sydney. Walk this timeline with me, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. November 12th, 2025. Harry's representatives contact the Australian government, describing the planned visit as personal and private. November 28th. Palace officials learn of the trip, not from Harry, not from his team, but through intelligence channels. That detail matters. The breach of family courtesy is documented from this very moment. December 3rd. William requests a formal briefing on Harry's Australian contacts and is shown communications suggesting diplomatic ambitions. December 17th. Charles holds a 3-hour meeting at Sandringham with William and Edward to begin contingency planning. According to senior insiders, that was their first one-to-one strategic meeting in over a year and a half. January 8th, 2026. The Palace Legal Office formally begins researching title revocation precedents, requesting memoranda on the Titles Deprivation Act from Three Kings Council. January 22nd, and this date deserves particular attention. William meets privately with Prime Minister Keir Starmer to ensure government support for potential constitutional action. Note the timing carefully. He is securing political cover before a single transgression in Australia has actually occurred. No meeting with Albanese has yet happened. No veterans event photograph has yet been taken. No Australian National University dinner recording exists yet. The plan was already in motion. What does that sequencing tell you about the nature of this operation? This was not a government being informed of a crisis. This was a government being recruited to a strategy. February 4th. Harry's team books the Kirribilli House meeting with Albanese without informing the Foreign Office. February 19th. British intelligence services brief Charles on the full scope of Harry's Australian itinerary, including the planned Republic Movement meeting, March 3rd. Harry arrives in Sydney. Enhanced monitoring protocols are immediately activated. From this point onward, the timeline accelerates with prosecutorial precision, March 5th. The Albanese meeting occurs. Transcripts reach London within 6 hours, March 6th. Veterans event photographs reach the Ministry of Defence, March 7th. The Australian National University dinner recording reaches palace officials through a sympathetic attendee, March 9th. Harry departs Australia, completely unaware that his entire visit has been comprehensively documented by both British and Australian intelligence services. March 11th. William convenes an emergency meeting of senior royals, Anne, Edward, Charles. March 13th. Charles authorizes William to explore all available options. March 18th. Legal counsel presents the translation of honors strategy with James identified as the appropriate recipient. March 24th. Edward gives conditional consent pending assurances about James's education and preparation. April 2nd. William sends a formal letter to Harry through solicitors outlining the charges and providing 14 days for response. April 8th. Harry's legal team responds, calling the charges baseless and threatening public litigation. April 10th. William instructs counsel to proceed regardless. April 14th. The Privy Council is formally notified of a forthcoming order in council regarding royal dignities. April 16th. Frogmore Cottage transfer documents are filed with Windsor registries. April 18th. Financial instruments worth approximately £12 million are frozen pending transfer. April 19th. The palace signals to select media that a major announcement is imminent. April 24th, 2026. Tonight, the formal announcement reaches every major news organization simultaneously. 18 months, every step documented, every legal threshold cleared before the next action was taken, every reversal point passed deliberately. This is not a family in chaos. This is an institution operating with the cold, meticulous efficiency of an organization that has survived 1,000 years and intends to survive 1,000 more. And Harry, who spent 6 years arguing that the monarchy operates through secrecy and institutional self-interest, has just provided the most compelling evidence yet that he was correct. While simultaneously becoming the target of exactly the machinery he described, the irony is not lost on constitutional historians tonight. It should not be lost on you either. Now turn to the most human element of this entire saga, because somewhere inside all of this, inside the legal frameworks, inside the constitutional arguments, inside the palace strategy sessions, there is a 15-year-old boy named James, and his story may ultimately be the most consequential of everything happening tonight. James, Earl of Wessex, is the youngest child of Prince Edward and Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. He has grown up in deliberate, careful obscurity. His parents made a conscious decision early in his childhood to keep him from the relentless scrutiny that has defined and, in many ways, damaged the lives of his cousins. His uncle, every young royal who has grown up under the permanent pressure of public attention, James attends school. He has friends who treat him as a person rather than as a symbol. He has been, by every account available, a remarkably grounded young man, given the extraordinary circumstances of the family he was born into. And now his trajectory is being rewritten by decisions made above him and around him, in rooms he was not present in, by adults responding to a crisis he had no part in creating, the Duke of Sussex. A title that entered the public consciousness through Harry and Meghan's wedding, through Netflix, through Spare, through 6 years of institutional confrontation, now belongs to him. The financial implications are significant. Approximately £875,000 in annual allowances previously allocated to Sussex-related expenses will be restructured through the Duchy of Cornwall. Frogmore Cottage has been officially reassigned to James's trust, effective April 1, 2026. Financial instruments worth approximately £12 million. Trust funds, Crown estate allocations. The entire financial architecture of a royal dukedom are being transferred in full. But at 15, James cannot personally control these assets. His father, Edward, will serve as trustee, likely until James reaches the age of 25 under the anticipated trust documents rather than the standard 18. Edward himself must now navigate a fundamentally altered set of responsibilities, a complete restructuring of his son's life and public identity, at precisely the moment his own brother's identity is being formally dismantled. Is this fair to James? Is it right to reshape a 15-year-old's future as part of an institutional response to his uncle's choices? That question has no clean answer. And the palace will eventually be required to address it publicly, because James did not choose this. And the weight of what he is inheriting extends far beyond properties and financial instruments. He is inheriting a story, one of the most contested, most emotionally charged stories in modern royal history, and he is 15 years old. Consider, too, the relationship dynamics now set permanently in motion. Harry's children, Archie and Lilibet, growing up in California, will one day understand that a title their father held, a title connected to their own family identity, was taken from him and given to their cousin. The generational consequences of that reality. The psychological weight it will carry across two branches of the same family will echo through this family for decades. The monarchy has made a clean institutional calculation tonight, but families are never clean. And the human cost of clean institutional calculations has a habit of surfacing in the most inconvenient moments, at the most inconvenient times. Now turn to what comes next, because nothing about this situation is resolved. The announcement has been made, the legal proceedings have been initiated, but what happens next is far from determined. Serious analysis of the evidence, the personalities, the institutional pressures at play, produces 5 distinct possible scenarios, each with its own probability, its own logic, its own long-term consequences for the monarchy's stability. Pay close attention, because one of them is already beginning to unfold. Scenario 1, complete capitulation, probability 12%. Harry accepts the revocation, withdraws entirely from quasi-official activities, redirects his energy toward American commercial ventures with no royal associations. This scenario preserves some remnant of family relationship and removes the ongoing institutional friction. But it requires Harry to abandon the identity he has spent 6 years building. The reformer, the whistleblower, the man who sacrificed institutional privilege to speak truth, 12% possible, but only barely. Scenario 2. Protracted litigation. Probability 38%. Harry challenges the revocation through judicial review in the High Court, arguing that the Titles Deprivation Act does not apply to his circumstances. Constitutional scholars give this argument less than a 15% chance of legal success. The Crown has historically been afforded extraordinary judicial deference in matters of honor, but legal victory may not be Harry's primary goal. 2 to 3 years of proceedings mean 2 to 3 years of headlines, leaked documents, sworn testimony about the family's inner workings, every deposition, every disclosed communication, Every piece of evidence entered into the public record becomes ammunition in the broader narrative war that Harry has been fighting since 2020. He may calculate that sustained institutional damage is itself a form of victory, even without winning a single court ruling. The palace, fully aware of this dynamic, will be calculating whether the reputational cost of years of litigation outweighs whatever is gained by forcing Harry to formally surrender the title through legal defeat. Scenario 3. Negotiated compromise. Probability 23%. Through intermediaries. And this family has always operated through intermediaries. William and Harry reach a private arrangement, perhaps facilitated by the Spencer family, who have always kept a quiet distance from royal politics but a fierce closeness to the late Diana's children. Harry retains the Duke of Sussex title as an honorific, but surrenders Frogmore Cottage, the financial instruments, the official privileges. Both sides accept partial defeat. A face-saving formulation is constructed. This scenario creates ambiguous precedent and satisfies nobody completely, but it ends the immediate confrontation without the collateral damage of years of litigation. Scenario 4. Escalating separation. Probability 41%, the highest of any scenario. Harry rejects the revocation publicly, but declines to pursue British court proceedings. Instead, he doubles down on American commercial activities, deepens his association with Republican movements, and positions himself as a royal-adjacent figure. Operating in permanent, explicit opposition to the institution, the split becomes irrevocable. Both sides operate independently. The Sussex brand becomes something entirely distinct from, and in perpetual tension with the crown. This is the most likely future, and it carries the most unpredictable long-term consequences for both parties. Scenario 5. Unexpected reconciliation. Probability 6%, a family health crisis, most likely involving Charles's ongoing cancer treatment, forces all parties to reassess personal priorities. A face-saving arrangement transfers properties and financial instruments to James, while Harry retains a modified, reduced version of the title. 6%. Nearly impossible, but not entirely. Which scenario do you believe is most likely? And here is the harder question. Which outcome would genuinely be best for the long-term health of the British monarchy? Because those are not the same question. The most probable future and the healthiest future may point in entirely opposite directions. Tell us your analysis in the comments below. This conversation matters. Now step back. Step back from the personalities for a moment. Step back from Harry and William, from Australia, from legal arguments and frozen financial instruments. Look at what this decision means for the institution itself, for the monarchy's structure, its authority, its relationship with the Commonwealth nations, watching every development with their own political calculations already in motion. William's action establishes a precedent that has never existed in modern constitutional history. An heir to the throne, not a sitting monarch, but a Prince of Wales, has exercised de facto co-sovereign authority in matters of family discipline and institutional protection. If this precedent holds, if the Privy Council ratifies the order in council in May without a successful legal challenge, the power balance within the royal family shifts permanently. Future heirs inherit not just the expectation of eventual sovereignty, but the demonstrated authority to act as co-equal disciplinarians of junior royals before they ever ascend to the throne. The translation of honors mechanism creates a brand new template for managing problematic family members, not exile, not quiet retirement. Active reallocation of titles, resources, and honors to more compliant individuals. This template can theoretically be applied to Andrew's remaining titles. It can be applied to Harry's own children if they ever seek royal roles as adults. It can be applied to any future family member who challenges institutional priorities with sufficient force and public visibility. The monarchy has developed a new instrument of institutional self-defense, and it has tested that instrument on the most visible, most contested royal figure of this generation. The Commonwealth dimension cannot be understated. Harry's Australia gambit exposed a genuine vulnerability in how the Commonwealth model functions. If a senior royal figure, Even one who has stepped back from official duties can independently engage with Commonwealth governments and Republican movements. The monarchy's ability to project unified, coherent, soft power across multiple realms is fundamentally compromised. William's overwhelming response sends a message that every Commonwealth government has now received with absolute clarity. The institution will not tolerate competing royal narratives. Freelance diplomacy carries existential consequences. Australia, Canada, Jamaica, New Zealand. Every nation conducting its own internal conversation about its relationship with the crown has just watched, in real time, what happens when a royal family member actively encourages that conversation. The lesson is unambiguous. There is one royal voice on matters of Commonwealth relations. There is one institutional position, and anyone who attempts to create a competing narrative, regardless of their bloodline or their personal popularity, will face consequences that are legal, financial, and permanent. That message was heard tonight in Canberra, it was heard in Ottawa, it was heard in Kingston, and it was designed to be. And what about Charles? The king authorized this action. His signature is on the strategy. But the visible architect, the driving force, the public face of institutional authority throughout this crisis is William. Charles is fighting cancer. The heir is fighting for the institution. Whether that distribution of authority reflects Charles's deliberate, considered delegation or something more concerning about his current capacity to govern is itself a question with profound implications for the succession timeline and the monarchy's near-term stability. Nobody in the mainstream media is addressing this question directly tonight, but consider the evidence. The December 2025 Sandringham meeting was convened by William. The January 2026 meeting with Keir Starmer was attended by William. The March 11th emergency meeting of senior royals was convened by William. Charles authorized. Charles approved. But William drove every stage of this process. At what point does authorization become delegation? At what point does delegation become succession in everything but name? These are not hypothetical questions. They are the questions that the next 12 months will force the palace to answer, whether it wants to or not. Here is where we stand tonight. Prince Harry is no longer the Duke of Sussex. Or, more precisely, he will not be once the Privy Council meets in early May and formally ratifies what the palace has already set in motion. The title, the properties, the financial instruments, all associated dignities are moving through a medieval doctrine revived in the service of a very modern institutional crisis, to a 15-year-old boy who did not ask for any of it. William has executed a constitutional maneuver of extraordinary audacity, constructed on 18 months of documented preparation, 3 interconnected statutes, 2 historical precedents, and a catalog of Harry's transgressions in Australia comprehensive enough to satisfy every legal threshold the palace needed to clear. Financial instruments worth approximately £12 million have been frozen and prepared for transfer. Property registries have been updated, the Privy Council has been formally notified, the legal machinery of the British state is already moving. And all that remains now is for it to reach its conclusion. A conclusion that, barring a successful legal intervention by Harry's team in the coming weeks, appears as close to inevitable as anything in British constitutional history ever does. Harry's response, expected within 48 to 72 hours of tonight's announcement, will determine which scenario this crisis moves toward. His legal team has already signaled public litigation. His commercial partners are already recalculating the Sussex brand's value. And somewhere in Montecito, California, a conversation is happening tonight that will shape not just the next chapter of this family's story, but the next chapter of the British monarchy's existence in a world increasingly skeptical of inherited privilege and institutional authority. 3 pressure points define the next 60 to 90 days. First, Harry's public response, dignified silence, or full escalation. Second, James's first public appearance in his new capacity, which will signal whether the palace intends to actively promote him as Harry's institutional replacement or maintain him in the background while the legal proceedings develop. Third, The Privy Council meeting in early May, the formal, final, legally binding ratification that transforms palace strategy into constitutional reality. If a successful legal challenge materializes before that meeting, everything changes. If it does not, the transfer becomes permanent. But before we close tonight, one final question for the comments. And ask yourself this genuinely, not as rhetorical performance, but as an invitation to serious, honest engagement. Does William possess the moral authority to do what he has done, setting aside the legal mechanisms, setting aside the documented transgressions, setting aside the institutional calculations? Is it right for a brother to dismantle his sibling's title, his properties, his financial security, and his identity? Or does this action, however legally grounded, represent precisely the kind of institutional overreach that Harry has spent 6 years warning us about? Your answer matters, because the monarchy's next move will be shaped in part by whether the British public and the international audience perceive this as justice served or as punishment delivered. History is full of institutions that confuse the two. The distinction, in a monarchy that ultimately derives its authority from public consent rather than divine right, carries more weight than any statute Parliament ever passed. The title has been formally taken, the transfer is now irrevocably underway, James is the new Duke of Sussex, and the future of the House of Windsor, fractured, reconfigured, legally contested, and deeply uncertain, will, at any point in a living generation, never look exactly the same again. The next 48 hours will write the next chapter. Stay with this story, because what happens next will be discussed for the next 100 years. The institution has spoken. The translation of honors is in motion, and the world is watching the most consequential royal restructuring of the modern age unfold in real time. Do not look away now. The final move is yet to come.